everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review. And for today's review, we're going to take a look at the new DC Comics Icon 6-inch Green Arrow figure from DC Collectibles. Now this figure comes packaged in the same style of window box packaging we've seen with the other icons. You've got the figure clearly displayed, you've got the DC Comics name off to the side, and the Icons logo down below with the little arrowhead in the O for Green Arrow. The box for this one is done in white and green colors, and off to the side you have the name of the character, and it tells us this is figure number 3 in the series. On the side of the packaging, it tells us that this figure is based on the Longbow Hunters storyline, and then on the back we have a look at all 4 figures in the first wave. So Batman, Deadman, Green Arrow, and Mr. Miracle. And then down below it tells us the figure was designed by Ivan Reyes and sculpted by Sam Greenwell. Okay, so let's get this open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. Before we look at the actual figure, let's first take a look at the accessories that come with it. Okay, so the figure comes with 2 sets of hands. He comes with a pair of closed-fisted hands, and these are the hands that are actually attached to the figure when you take it out of the packaging. And then he's got a pair of open hands, and these are for holding his bow and arrow. So the left hand is more open. This is the better hand for putting his bow in. And then the right hand is sculpted, so the fingers are kind of curved for holding the bowstring, and you can also fit an arrow between the fingers, so that's nice. It allows you to get them into pretty good bow firing positions with this. The bow itself, in the story that the figure is based on, the Longbow Hunters, he basically uses just a basic bow and arrow, so it's not like a compound bow or anything. And it's just a brown, the handle is just brown plastic, and then you've got a little bit darker paint used on the handle. And then the string has good elasticity to it, so, you know, again, can kind of fire off arrows with that, which is nice. Then finally, he does come with multiple arrows. He basically comes with 2 single arrows, and these are exactly the same. Nice detailing on the feathers, the green feathers with the line work in it. I like that. You got the little indentation on the back here for the string, and then you've just got brown plastic for the actual staff of the arrow. For the arrowhead, they've used a metallic silver. And again, pretty nice detailing on the arrowhead. Then he also comes with 2 different double arrows, and these are basically the same as the single arrows. It's just essentially 2 arrows kind of glued together, and he comes with 2 sets of those. The figure also comes with a working quiver. However, the quiver is not removable. It's glued onto the back of the figure, but it will hold all the arrows that he comes with, so that's nice. And he can actually, you know, he's got good enough articulation that he can actually reach back and grab arrows, which again is pretty nice. The quiver has also got this strap. It's actually a separate piece from the quiver. It's attached to it's also a separate piece from the figure itself. It's done with that kind of rubber type material, so it fits, you know, a little bit loosely on the figure, but so not to really restrict his movement, which is good, but it's not removable. The quiver and the brown that they've used, it definitely comes off looking like it's leather. So for the figure itself, I like the overall look of it, even though honestly this isn't my favorite version of the character. This more kind of Robin Hood type costume was never really a favorite of mine. I know that's kind of what the character's based on, and if you're a fan of the classic look, I think they've captured it well with the figure. But he's got this hood, which is done with that kind of vinyl type material, and it's actually loose on, you know, it's not glued, the hood's not glued to the figure's head, so you can actually pull it back, and you've got detailing on the head sculpt, which is nice. You've got the yellow hair. There's no really any kind of wash work in the hair, so it's just yellow. Same with the goatee, and he's got the green mask sculpted around his eyes. The eyes are kind of whited out. Skin tones are good on this figure, probably the best skin tones of all the figures in the wave. Well, I guess Batman's really the only other figure that has skin tones, but definitely better skin tone than what's on the face for Batman. I don't, however, like the fact that the hood doesn't actually turn with the head, so, you know, and this is a problem that we've seen with other arrow-based figures. So when you have him like turn to the right, you know, he's kind of looking more into the hood, which is, you know, not that great. It would have been nice if they had kind of made the hood so it would turn with the head. Now I will say that the hood looks like it's glued onto the figure, and it doesn't look like it's glued very well. You can actually see some separation here on the side. So if you really wanted to get that off, you probably could without too much of a problem. However, I don't really know how well the figure would look without the hood, especially because it wouldn't have this collar piece, which is part of the hood. So I don't know how well that would look if you actually took it off. For the rest of the figure, it's just basic paint applications. You've got dark green used on his tunic and his gloves and his hood and his boots, and then you've got a lighter green, olive type green used on his sleeves and his legs, and again around his neck here. And I think it looks pretty good, but again, pretty basic, not much in the way of any kind of wash work. And then you've got some brown on his gloves and brown on his belt. They've used a gold metallic paint for the G emblem on his belt. And the belt itself is actually just sculpted on the figure. It's not a separate piece. This little tunic piece that goes around his waist is that kind of vinyl material. So it has some flexibility, but it does limit some of his leg movement, which we'll look at when we look at his articulation. But again, overall basic paint applications, no serious paint blemishes or anything. So I would say a pretty good solid paint job. He's got some nice sculpting detail on the boots. I like the little tassels that they've sculpted on there, and I like, you know, how the boots kind of fold over. That looks pretty good. So the figure stands at about exactly 6 inches tall if you count to the top of his hood. So that puts him at about the same height as the Icon's Batman figure. And then here's a look at all 4 icons together in the first wave, and Batman, Green Arrow, and Deadman are all about the same height. Mr. Miracles may be a tad smaller than the other 3. And then, as we mentioned in the other Icons reviews, these figures are a bit smaller than other 6-inch lines, such as Hasbro's Marvel Legends. So here's a look at the Hawkeye Marvel Legends, and you can see Hawkeye is a bit taller than Green Arrow. And then finally, here's a look at some other Arrow figures, the New 52 Arrow figure from DC Collectibles, and the TV series Arrow figure. And you can see these are 7-inch scale, and they're definitely taller. So articulation on this figure is pretty much the same as we've seen with the other figures in the line. The head is on a ball joint. Now the funny thing is the head on this figure can actually look up a little more than the other figures, but that's kind of nullified with the hood. So I don't know why this one has more up movement than the others. It's not a whole lot of up movement, but just a little bit more. But again, it's kind of nullified. He can look down good, and he can of course look left and right. Now, as I mentioned before, with the hood doesn't turn with the head, so you know, when you have him looking to the left or right with the hood on, then he's kind of ends up looking into his hood. You also kind of get that separation between the neck and the head with this, but again, it's not terribly noticeable, especially when you have the hood on. And he can kind of pivot his head to the left and right as well. Arms are attached with your standard ball hinge joint, so he can get his arms out good. He's got good rotation there at the arms, and as I said, he can reach back and actually grab arrows out of his quiver, which is good. He's got the bicep swivel, and then he's got the double hinged elbow, so he's got good bending at the elbow, and then he's got the swivels at the wrists, and he's got hinges on the hands, so he's got good up and down movement with the hands, which again comes in handy with the bow firing positions. He's got the midsection joint, which has a rotation, and it's limited a little bit by that strap, but as I said, that strap fits kind of loosely, so it doesn't limit it too much. And then he's got a little bit of crunch movement, not a whole lot, especially with the quiver there at the midsection, but he also has the ab crunch joint, so he can bend down and he can look back with that ab crunch. No waist swivel on this. Legs are attached with ball joints, but again, because of the skirt piece, it is limited a little bit, so he can get his legs forward or out about that much. He can only do his leg forward about that much, and then he can do his leg back about that much. No thigh swivel, double jointed knee, so he does have good bending at the knee, and then he does have a boot cuff swivel, and then he's got the hinges on the feet, so he's got good up and down movement with the feet, and he's got the ankle pivot. And then 2 peg holes on the bottom of his feet. And you can get him in some pretty good bow firing positions with the articulation on the figures I mentioned before, which I think is good. You can actually get him in better bow firing positions than, like, say, that Hasbro Marvel Legends, Marvel Now Hawkeye figure. So definitely I like the articulation here. Okay, so that's my review. Overall, I think this is a pretty good figure. I like the articulation on it. I'm not a huge fan of this design of the costume, but if you are a fan of this more classic look, then I think you'll definitely like this figure. I do wish they had a way of making the hood move with the head, but other than that, I don't have any real complaints with it. Maybe some trick arrows would have been nice. I don't know if he used a lot of trick arrows in the storyline the figure's based on, but nevertheless, it still would have been nice if maybe they had mixed up the arrows with a few actual trick type arrows. But still, I'm glad we got multiple arrows, and I like how they fit in the quiver, and I'm glad he can like reach back and get arrows and stuff. So, you know, like I said, overall, I think this is a pretty nice looking figure. I do hope we get a more modern version of Green Arrow in this line at some point. But if you're a fan of this classic design, I think you'll definitely want to pick this one up. It is hitting comic and specialty shops now. We'll have a full gallery of images up at toynewseye.com. There's a link in the description below. And as always, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. If you're so inclined, please like the video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, and until next time, I'll catch you later.